Hey everybody, so here we go into Noah's Ark. So, boy, this is a big one, eh? And it's a tough one to preach, to be honest, and to teach on because there's so many assumptions and, uh, misunderstandings and conceptions on this particular text. And we all know it so well, right? Like any of us who had kids, we had little Noah Ark sets, or we would have seen little Noah Ark movies. I remember we had a Noah Ark room in our last church, which was our nursery. It has become so understood in terms of kid stories and stuff. And then when you have the actual physiological realities of what might have even happened according to the Ark story, these are practical impossibilities, at least if we take the text as it's interpreted. Now, why I say that is because there is a possibility interpretations are maybe not completely accurate. For example, mountains in antiquity would not have meant the mountains what we think mountains are. The mountains that we think of, like Mount Robson, or in this case, all the other mountains of that age, would have been the places where God dwelt and held up the sky. Were they talking about mountains in that context, or were they talking about the foothills? Is this so? These are some of the solutions people have had. Mount Ararat, they end up on Mount Ararat. Does is this the Mount Ararat? Is this the top of Mount Ararat? There's some question of whether that's what this means, or does it mean being kind of on the middle of it? How does a dove fly and get an olive branch that only grows in small in lower areas, regions, and then is impossible for a dove to fly up to the top of a mountain? It doesn't have those capabilities. These are all kinds of questions people have. How do these things work? And the amount of water that would have to be displaced, humanity just wouldn't be able to survive no matter what. Even if it evaporated. There's so many of these questions that go on and on. Um, that, to be honest, I'm not even going to dwell with all of them because in the end, I don't think this is really what the text is. Um, the text is a stylized version of the why and not the how. So let me tell you what I know to be true, or at least I believe to be true in this text, that we have to hold as true. There was a cataclysmic event, a flood of epic proportions that is spoken about in all kinds of creation narratives. And this cataclysmic event, which, there are cataclysmic events that can be shown. The Mediterranean basin flooded one time. Is that what it's talking about? Something happened way, way back, long before Abraham, long before there was a Jewish language, long before that. And out of Mesopotamia came this story, okay? And this is our story, our version of it. And out of this came all of these creation stories that were very similar. And so the Israelites are telling their version of this creation story. Obviously, we believe inspired by God, that was handed to us from Moses. But they're not telling us a how it happened. They're trying to tell this story of this cataclysmic event in light of these other stories. So the why is important, and it's telling us as much as we're going to find out about God as about ourselves, about the world around us. And so when we get to the Noah's Ark, I'm not going to spend a lot of time in this teaching or in preaching about the impossibilities and all of that, because I think we're making literary mistakes on the genre when we're trying to ask of it. And I'll try and show some ways, like the use of numbers in these literary genres are very different than the way we do it. And it becomes very obvious. Um, and so when we tackle this, I'm just going to tell you what I think the text is trying to say to us, and then we'll look at what the New Testament writers did with it because they talk about Noah's Ark. All right, so let's get into it right away. So here we go. Where are we not working here? Just give me 1 second. There we go. All right. Now, the earth was corrupt in God's sight. So, the first thing that's juxtaposed to the creation stories around it. Now, there's one particular story where there's 17 places where the language is the same, and it's a story in creation. Right beside them, they're neighbors. And it was called the Gilgamesh epic. And within this creation story, it's also a flood story. And this is the one closest to our particular creation stories. Again, there's 67 creation stories in ancient creation narratives. Sorry, flood stories. And this flood story called the Gilgamesh epic one is the one closest. Now, the reason why the gods in that particular case flood the earth is they have created humanity. They regret it because they're getting too loud. They're disturbing the peace of the gods. So what happens is they plan to flood the earth to keep the noise down, to as population control. This is very different than these needy gods who want to rest from our God. So look at it juxtaposed to that. Now, the earth was corrupt in God's sight. So this has to do with chaos, with evil. Remember, God creates the earth. There is the chaos waters, the wind comes across, upon it, and then you begin to see the land begins to form, and then you see the animals, and then humanity. This is going to be very important to our story here, because what we're seeing here is that chaos now, the chaos waters, the chaos that God had covered with the wind, it has now been released. Humanity is now evil. There's corruption in God's sight. The earth was filled with violence. And God saw the earth, and behold, it was corrupt. This word corrupt, this is chaos. This is evil. It has lost its way. The goodness is gone. The order is gone. For all flesh had corrupted their way on the earth. So now all flesh, it's just everything's off. And this is all, of course, the climax of what's happened in Genesis 3. That when we tried to be like God, something was released into the atmosphere, as it were, and this has corrupted everything in. So the goodness of Genesis 1 and 2 is over. We've seen this build up. We saw last week where the leaders were oppressing. And now we get this view of God where he looks upon it. And it isn't because it's so noisy, it's because it is of corruption. So this is a good, just God who makes things good and just. This is not a God who needs. That's very important, because sometimes these stories are told about God in the Noah story as if he was just capricious in his laying out of judgment. This is because he's seeing injustice. He's seeing the great evil that humanity is doing to itself and the world falling apart. And of course, we can understand that. In a way, we aren't God, but we can understand when we see somebody abused and neglected, and uh, when we see injustice done, we sense a bit of that. You can imagine the God who created the goodness and how he would feel about it when he sees the chaos. And God said to Noah, I have determined to make an end of all flesh, for the earth is filled with violence through them. Behold, I will destroy them on the earth. What we have here is the vow now that he's going to bring his judgment. He's a good God who brings his judgment. So this is how we're going to begin this. This is the foundation. All right. And then I'm going to take you to note, we're going to miss the how many, the gopher wood and all of that stuff, because it's really, to my point, it's irrelevant how many cubits it needs to be, all of those things. Then the Lord said to Noah, go into the ark, you and your household, for I have seen that you are righteous before me in this generation. Notice that it says before me in this generation. He's grading on a curve. This isn't that Noah is righteous as in Jesus righteous. It just means in light of his generation, he's righteous. And what's incredible here, of course, is we see again the mercy of God. You've got the judgment of God against chaos, and yet he's not going to give up on humanity. He's not going to give up on creation, in the sense of he doesn't lose this fight. He is going to bring order, and this is going to carry on right to Jesus Christ, right? And what he does in bringing new creation. What we have to see here too is the other gods, they use a man to trick him, to keep humanity going, because they have needs, food to be fed. In this case, God sees righteousness and in righteousness. So we have in righteousness in the judgment, righteousness in Noah, at least in light terms of his generation. And in the other case, in the Gilgamesh epic and others like it, the gods want to destroy humanity as population control because they're irritating other gods, trick the other gods because they know that humanity has to feed them, so they save a family out of it. So that's how it goes. Very different views of God, as you can see. All right. Take with you, and now here we just, I put this in just for stylized. Take with you 7 pairs of clean animals. The 7 is important. 10, go and read it, by the way, read the whole text. You see 10s and 7s and 6s. All these numbers had deep meanings that far translate. So 7 is perfect or complete. Take with you 7 pairs. I know the male and his mate. Why 2? Why have 2 of every animal? Because he's planning new creation. Okay, so he needs 2. You can't, you have this reality. He's created creation where you have to have procreation to continue it. So the 2, that's why that's in there. That's the stylized reason for that. and a pair of animals that are not clean, the male and his mate, and 7 pairs of the birds of the heavens also, male and female. You see, the 7 is obviously stylized to make a point, complete, to keep their offspring alive on the face of all the earth. For in 7 days I will send rain on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights. 40, very important number. And of course, we see that with Jesus, the 40 days in the wilderness, the 40 years, and the people of Israel. Don't forget, Moses writes the Exodus narrative. So there's something going on. There's all this correlation, right? And you can start to see all of this stuff. You've got a water that comes, chaos, and then they come out, and you're going to see them come and arrive on land. What happens out of Egypt? They go through water, they end up in land. There's something very beautiful in this, the wise story of how God works with new creation. But you guys can discuss that above yourselves. And every living thing that I have made, I will blot out from the face of the ground. So um, he's going to bring this judgment. This is the final thing. And Noah did all that the Lord had commanded him. So he is shown as being faithful. Noah's an interesting character. Later, you'll have people that Moses went and preached to his generation, and that became very popular in the intertestamental time. There's lots of discussion about that by Jesus' day for sure. But actually, in the Christian narrative, he's a very flat character. This is all about God. He just happens to be righteous compared to the other people, and he just does what he's told. And there's no claim, there's no grief, there's no pleading for mercy, there's no interaction with Noah. Noah himself does not have actually much character development in this, because this is about God and his humanity and about God bringing new creation. That's the theme of this story. So, and after 7 days, the waters of the flood came upon the earth. 7, 7, 7. You start to see this continuation. You're going to see 46. Usually it has to do 7, has to complete something to do with a new creation or the perfect judgment. 6 often has to do with things that are incomplete or damaged. 10 is also complete, so you'll see that number added in. So anyways, those are just some examples. We saw that when we did Revelation together. All right, so then we get through this and we have the judgment, but then we get to the other side. So we have the flood. It talks about how long the waters were there, how high they went, and then they come down. And then he says, but God remembered Noah and all the beasts and all the livestock that were with him in the ark. Now, here we go. Here's what is, we see the judgment and now the new creation. What happened in the beginning in Genesis 1:1? You have the chaos waters, and then a wind blows, a mighty wind blows, or the mighty spirit. What happens here? You've got the waters, chaos is released. Chaos consumes chaos. Do you notice that humanity is being chaos? The judgment is actually God allowing chaos to win. And then the judgment comes. That's always the case with God's judgment in the Old and New Testament. He brings the good, the order. When we choose the evil and the chaos, eventually he says, okay, here you go. And he releases that. In this same case, humanity becomes the chaos. They become evil. And he says, okay, you get what you pay for. You want this, here you go. And the waters come back. But he doesn't give up. The chaos does not win. So the chaos waters come. And God made a wind blow over the earth and the waters subsided. So again, you see this picture, a beautiful picture of humanity, of the creation being started as new creation again. Now, it's a promise that won't be fulfilled through Noah, as we know. In fact, Noah, it's actually going to say, well, the earth is even more cursed because now humanity is going to dominate the animals. It's going to become more and more. So it's not that the solution happens but in this story, what they're trying to say is the reason God takes the judgment or brings this new creation is because there's righteous. He wants to fulfill that, and he wants to bring new creation. He wants to bring the order out of chaos. In the other creation stories juxtaposed to this, the reason they let humanity flourish again is because they're hungry. They need food. Humanity needs to feed them. These gods are very sad, really. They're really pathetic. And this God is not. He's not hungry. He's not needy. He's decided he wants to bring the good out of the chaos humanity has brought upon itself. All right. The fountains of the deep and the windows of the heavens were closed. The rain from the heavens were restrained. At the end of 40 days, and open the window now. Again, we have the Gilgamesh epic. This is another one where the same 3 birds are released. The same 3 birds from the thing. The only thing is the raven in their story. And I think the reason the dove rather than the raven in this story is, again, to juxtapose the 2 stories. So you're actually going to find these creation stories very similar. They're out of some similar myth. Myth doesn't mean untrue. Myth means a legend, a story that's out there based on truth. And what's happening is the Israelites are telling this story, but they're telling this is who God really is. This is who humanity is. And by turning around which bird comes back, they're turning around the whole story upon them. All right. At the end of the 40 days, Noah opened the window of the ark that he had made and sent forth a raven in this case. It went to and fro until the waters were dried up from the earth. Then he sent forth a dove from him to see if the waters had subsided from the face of the ground. But the dove found no place to set her foot, and she returned. So in this case, the dove goes twice. And she returned to hit the ark, for the waters were still in the face of the holder. So he put out his hand and took her and brought her into the ark with him. He waited another how many days? You're getting the point. 7. And again, he sent forth the dove out of the ark, and the dove came back to him in the evening. And behold, in her mouth was a freshly plucked olive leaf. Of course, this is where we get the olive leaf and peace and new creation and the dove. And so Noah knew that the waters had subsided from the earth. Now, we, of course, can't help but hear Jesus' baptism in this. Jesus goes into the chaos waters. The Spirit falls upon the Spirit means mighty breath. And how does it come down? It comes down as a dove. You can see all of these correlations. Jesus then is the point of new creation whose Spirit stops chaos and brings new life. And it's not that Jesus needs the Spirit. Jesus already has the Spirit. It's a point that God, through Jesus Christ, is bringing new creation to humanity. If you read it in light of this story, he's bringing the new Exodus, the new land that's going to be pursued. It's a beautifully artistic way of telling the story. And God, Yahweh, is showing that Jesus Christ, being Yahweh, of course, is going to be the place of new creation, ultimate new creation. Then he waited another 7 days and sent forth the dove, and she did not return to him anymore. So you've got this story, you got the dove, and you got people who have been judged, but you have by a righteous God. The one righteous comes through. This will be part of Israelites' remnant theology, that there will always be God who is wanting to save out of the chaos. He brings us to the other side, and humanity then begins this process of new creation, which won't be fulfilled in Noah's day, but it's the promise there, the promise of mercy, even in amongst judgment of that we bring upon ourselves. We bring the judgment on ourselves because he brings order. We bring chaos. He ultimately allows chaos. That's what Jesus says, by the way. The judgment's really on ourselves. Jesus brings salvation. Are we going to receive it? All right. And then we go, then God said to Noah, get out from the ark, you and your wife and your sons' wives with you. What happened in the creation story? First, we had the animals, all the birds. Remember the first 7 days, and then humanity. Well, what does he do? Bring out with you everything that is with you among the flesh. We have the birds and animals and the creeping things that creeps of the earth. Same story as of Genesis 1. We have this new creation. He's pointing by the original creation story by using the same language, the same way of things, the chaos being covered, the order coming, and then you have the animals and then the human beings, and then they're fruitful and multiply right out of Genesis 1. You see that Noah then becomes, and this is the main point, part of the new creation. He's not there to feed the gods. He's there to bring the fulfillment of mercy, even though humanity embraced chaos. And it gives humanity hope. That's what this story is about, actually. Birds and animals and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth, that they may swarm on the earth and be fruitful and multiply on the earth. So Noah went out with his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him. So you have this wife language again. You have the covenant language in Genesis 1. Every beast, every creeping thing, and every bird, everything that moves on the earth went out, and the families of the ark. That's where I'm going to end it. The main point. This is not like the gods that are worshipped elsewhere. This is about the God of heaven and earth. Made things that are good. We embraced chaos. He allowed chaos to reign, but he doesn't give up, and he plans new creation, and he uses all of this language is artistically told. Absolutely, there was an event. Absolutely, there's a flood. I'm not saying there isn't, but we must allow it to tell us the why rather than the how. They have no interest in telling you the details of the flood in some scientific journal. They wouldn't even understand it that way. It would be unfair to them. It would be so unfair to them to apply that. And the fact we do is really sad. Take what it's really saying. This God is good. He allows chaos to come, but he doesn't give up. We have the Noah. And this story is going to go right through to Jesus Christ. There will be judgment, but ultimately God is going to bring redemption. And ultimately then the new creation is going to come through Jesus, and the ultimate promise of that new creation will be fulfilled in the resurrection. All right. So I'm just going to encapsulate this section and the meaning of it by quoting Ian Provan, because I think it's a great quote. So what do we have in Genesis 6:9 to 9:29? It seems likely that we have a very particular and very Hebrew version of something that already existed in the Mesopotamian literary tradition. In other words, these stories are already out there, and it's a corrective. An OT retelling of an ancient story designed to reframe what was already known about the distant past so that it conformed to what the ancient Hebrews believed to be true about God, the world, human beings, and human society. This is the purpose of its writing. Don't get caught up into it, into the scientific side of it. That's unfair to it, and it's unfair to you as the reader, to be honest. All right. So this event happened. So let's get into the New Testament quickly and how it uses the Noah judgment. So we first have Jesus. We did the Olivet Discourse. You'll remember that. The Israelites have their day of the Lord. He's coming to the temple. Will they receive the Lord? The warning of judgments there. And what does he use as that example of that judgment will come, which we know happens in 70 AD when they refuse Jesus and kill him? Israel is judged. Their day of the Lord has happened. What does Jesus do in that warning? Just as it was, he says, in the days of Noah, so it will be in the days of the Son of Man. They were eating, drinking, marrying, and being given up into marriage until the day when Noah entered the ark and the flood came and destroyed them all. He is warning Israel that don't think because things haven't happened that you've killed me, which they do, that means judgment isn't coming. You will continue to do that, and we know what happens to Israel. It is completely judged. God uses Rome as the waters of chaos that brings judgment to them, and because they refuse Jesus. That's Jesus' warning used in the Noah's story. Peter, on the other hand, also uses the Noah story in First Peter when he's warning humanity about the days of the Lord. He's also talking about getting married and marriage. He talks about the church and being baptized like the ark. And then you have this point where he actually is saying, why hasn't this happened yet? People are asking. Well, the day of the Lord is going to come, Peter says. But Peter says, just like today, this is not happened yet. And then Peter's reasoning for that, why this judgment that he likens to Noah is this. Finally, all of you have the unity in mind, sympathy. No, I put in the wrong text. Suffice to say that what Peter is saying is this judgment's coming, but the only reason it hasn't happened yet is God wants everyone to repent, just like he did then. He doesn't want chaos to win, and ultimately he wants people to repent. But there will be a day of judgment, the day of Noah, for the day of the Lord for humanity, for evil will be wiped out from this face of the earth. And we have the option of embracing new creation, of getting on the ark, baptized, the creation story, being part of new creation in Jesus Christ. Our faith in Jesus Christ saves us from this judgment that is going to come on humanity. That is a New Testament truth. All right, so let's just get into the questions here. A God who judges is a very unpopular idea in contemporary society. Why might that be? Is a God who doesn't judge evil really good? All right, number 2. The church has constantly connected Noah and the ark with followers of Christ in the church. How might the church have come to this conclusion? I'm talking about the early church, including the earliest writings we have. What might this say about our view of the world around us? If the church is to be the ark, what does that mean about the world? And what is our purpose then? Because I think it's more than just to hop in a boat. I think it's about salvation, and there is judgment. So let's think about that. And finally, Jesus and Peter saw the tragic events as correlating to 1, the day of judgment on Israel and the day of the Lord, and 2, the judgment on the day of the Lord of this age. What should we take out of this as a warning? What is the good news in the Noah story of the judgment of evil on the world? All right, so I'll leave that with you. I want you to note also, and I'll end with this, that the ark does not have a rudder. It doesn't have sails. What does that tell us about Noah and God and salvation? Think about that again. It doesn't have a way of directing itself, of driving itself. What might that say to us and what faith is about? I'll leave that with you. That was an extra bonus question for discussion.